There it is. It was just delayed. Welcome, everybody. This is the InfoEd 201 Budget Development Webinar. We are very glad that you are all here. My name is Stacy. We're going to do some real brief introductions and a little bit of overview about InfoEd as a platform and a tool to help the research enterprise here at the university. And then we're going to go into a deep dive of the budget tool itself with some specific details and scenarios that may be typical for folks who are developing proposals for submission. So let's go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Stacy Wisniewski. I am a key person involved in training and support. So you may hear my voice a lot in webinars and in workshops. And also you may be getting some targeted outreach from me to see how things are going, what questions you have, and what additional resources and trainings might be of use and value to you. Also on the call is Jamie Van Natta. She is our InfoEd Systems Administrator. She knows the system inside and out and is our resident expert in the workings of InfoEd, and she'll be doing the demonstration today of the site. And then we have Rick Francis, Director of Research Advancement, who is the captain of our little ship and helps us all go in the right direction and get things together for supporting the PIs and other staff who are doing research here at the university. Just a couple of housekeeping details here at the beginning. There is a live captioning feature on Teams. If you were not aware of that and you need that, you can activate it in the menu across the top of your screen under the three dots where it says More. There is a feature in there that you can turn on to see live captioning on your side. If you have questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. We will address them as we are able in the chat during the webinar, and we will come back to anything that got overlooked or needs to be addressed in more detail towards the end. And in the meantime, if you can let your microphone be on mute, it does help limit the echo and makes the audio better for everyone. I did just want to check in with Deidre. I saw your hand for a brief second. Is there a question you had right now that you were hoping to get answered up front?
Nope, that was just a misclick. Sorry.
I get it. No worries. Thank you. So for today, what we are going to talk about for just a minute or two is overall what InfoEd can do for you, the benefits it brings to the research enterprise here at the University of Toledo. We are going to give you a demonstration of the budget tool and common scenarios. We probably will not discuss every possible scenario because every research project and team has some things about it that is unique. But we will cover the common things, the big things, and we will be available for additional support and help after today for your unique situation if needed. And we will address questions and resources at the end for continued support going forward. Some of the benefits of InfoEd. It is a platform that is more collaborative. It allows PIs, other folks on the research team, grants coordinators, system administrators like me, Jamie, and Rick, and other folks who are involved in the research process, the proposal process. It allows all of us to work on the same record if needed, not simultaneously. One person at a time has to work on it, but it does allow everyone to touch the same record and do the parts that are needed for their role. So that's really cool. Routing in InfoEd is automatic. So once a proposal has been sent to route for endorsement, for example, all of the people who need to participate in that endorsement process will be notified automatically and be able to complete that process through system functions that allow them to approve or disapprove and move it on to the next person. Also, emails will be sent to keep you updated on where your proposal is in the process, in the endorsement process, for example. And all of the proposals you might be involved in or named on will be in one easy to find place where you can see them at a glance and pick the one that you need to work on for that moment. InfoEd does replace a number of things in the way that we are currently doing proposal development. For example, InfoEd will take the place of the proposal intake form, the RSP 100, the Excel budget worksheet, and the RSP cost match form. All of those things have equivalent functionality in InfoEd, and those 4 different tools that we are currently using will no longer be needed. So that'll be a bit of a shift, and we think a big value add for folks who are constantly trying to track down different forms and pieces of paper and whatnot. Now it'll all take place in one place in InfoEd. There will also be some reduced processing time between award and account setup once we are finished implementing the post-award side of InfoEd. We're looking to see that rolled out in the next fiscal year. So it's not ready immediately, but it will be. And once it is up and running, we will have some efficiencies there between award notification and account setup, which is awesome because it's all about getting those research dollars available to you to use for your project. Just a heads up on the implementation timeline, we are in the throes of folks getting started in InfoEd right now, and some of the big focus we have at the moment is for NSF and NIH. Anything that's going to be submitted for those January 1, 2024 deadlines and beyond will be expected to be put into InfoEd for both NSF and NIH, and we've already been working with nonprofit sponsors, industry sponsors, Ohio local government, other types of government sponsors. We've already been working with those types of sponsors for the past month and a half or so. Some things that are still to come down the road are going to be the U.S. Department of Energy. When University of Toledo is a subcontractor, we're going to look at implementing that in InfoEd next spring, April 1st-ish. And then some agencies, we're still working on an implementation deadline, specifically NASA, DOD, some other federal agencies are still to be determined on when exactly we are going to implement those. This rollout schedule is on our resource page, so you don't have to memorize this. You can go and check at any time to make sure that you're doing your type of proposal in InfoEd if needed. And with that, I'm going to pass the reins to my trusty colleague, Jamie, and she's going to do the demonstration of the budget tool in InfoEd. Jamie, are you ready?
I am.
All righty, here you go.
All right. So good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can see my screen. You should be seeing our a web browser with our InfoEd implementation on it. I will note that I am. Okay, good. I will note that I am working in our test environment, but you guys, there's a different URL, so don't copy this URL. Don't use this one. It's got our test environment. And I already logged in, and I am logged in as our demonstration PI. So I'm a typical researcher. This is what a typical researcher would see. And I should have opened it up like this. There we go. So when you first log into InfoEd, I'm going to very briefly talk about a couple of things, but if you want some overview or some information about what you see here, what you can do here specifically regarding financial conflict of interest or starting your proposal, because we're going to dig into a proposal that I've already created for today. Then we have webinars about that already, and they also can be links to recordings of those can be found on our resources page in addition to some documentation. So I'm not going to go over like what does the portal look like and what are we going to do. What I'm going to point out though is that I logged in knowing that I've already created this proposal and now I just need to find it. So I'm going to review really quickly how to find a record that you've already created, not how to start a new one. So for the time being, we have a couple of options up here in the blue bar in order to figure out, in order to find the record that we need to work on today. So the first thing I want to point out is this locate my records. When I click that, I get a list of all of the records on which I am the record owner. And the owner in the context of a proposal is the PI. So this already gives me a list of everything I'm on as PI. Now, if I'm not on it as PI, I'm not the owner of it, and therefore it wouldn't show up in this list. But if I need to look at something that I don't own, then locate records is the option that allows me to search for proposals that I might be on that I'm not technically the PI on. So there's two tools, one for stuff I have and one for stuff that I'm just on in some other capacity. The other kind of cool find here is this quick find tool. This quick find tool is going to search the record number, record owner, and record title for any set of characters that you put in here. So for example, if I couldn't remember what my title was, or I couldn't remember anything but that maybe a little part of the title, I could type ground in here, be like, okay, it was about groundwater. If I just type ground in here, then I can hit search and it will find the ones where ground is anywhere in record number, record owner, or record title. So this is our little quick find. If you happen to know the number, great, you could type it in. If you happen to know the part of the title, you can type it in. If you happen to be looking for a different PI, you can type that PI's name in here too, and it would find records that you have access to that are owned by that person. So for today, however, I can just click locate my records and I only have 11. It's not too terrible. I can kind of sort this out, and here, this one happens to be the one that I'm going to look at. So I created this one, like I said, earlier today, just for the purposes of doing this, because our budget, our proposal/budget overview talked all about how to create a record, but this is just how to find it. So I'm going to hover, I'm going to click on proposal here. That's going to create a flyout menu, and then I'm going to hover over proposal development, and then I'm going to click edit because I want to open this record for editing. So this is my proposal record, and you'll notice that it opened in a new window. So I like to kind of stagger the windows a little bit here and adjust the sizes so that it's easy to see that it's on top of my dashboard or my portal page behind here. InfoEd does that, so just notice, like, if you click on this, now it looks like my proposal's disappeared, but it hasn't actually disappeared. It's still there. You just have to find it in the layout, in the layers of windows. So again, in our proposal/budget overview, we talk about setup questions and the intake endorsement form replacement. But for today, we're just going to dive right into the budget tool. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and it's going to open yet another window. So the budget tool is the only thing in the proposal that opens its own separate window, though. So that's why I now have 3 windows deep here. So this particular project is an NSF project. It's what's called a Partnership for Innovation project, and I have created it with 2 budget periods. So when I did the create screen, it asked me what my budget periods or what the length of the project was going to be, and it divvied up budget periods for me. It also put me in as PI, but right now that's all there is to it. So this budget has $0 in it when I first open it up, and I land on this kind of like overview budget page. So this is going to look a lot different than the Excel spreadsheet, but it works a little bit the same. So basically we take like one item at a time and we kind of figure out which column does it go in, that kind of thing. So I'm going to start with myself, and I'm going to dedicate some time to this project. So the first thing I'm going to do is just open this detail. And when I do that, I get my base salary, which came in from Banner. I get an automatic escalation of 3%. They call it inflation in InfoEd, but it's the automatic 3% escalation. And then you can also see that you can't tell right away, but you can see kind of that I'm a 12-month employee because the calendar months here is the box that's available. So basically I just get to put in how much time, how much effort am I putting in on this project. And so for the purposes of the demonstration today, I'm going to put 2 calendar months on this. Now, when I hit 2 and I hit tab over, it actually says, oh, you put 2 in year 1, so you probably mean 2 in year 2 as well. And so that's a helpful thing, but maybe it might not be right. So you can go down here and fix it if you need to. So maybe I'm going to put a little bit more time in year 2 than I put in year 1. So you can adjust these as necessary, but it does do some filling in for you so that if you are going to stay the same across all the budget periods, then you don't have to make any changes. You just have to put the data in once. So in this case, I've put 2 months here and 2.5 months here, and that's my effort. Now, this is committed effort. So keeping that in mind, it is going to show up on your effort report. It is going to be reportable, all of those things. So we're not doing uncommitted effort. You're not recording anything that isn't committed effort. And I'll probably say that one more time because it's pretty important. So I'm a 12-month employee. I have my escalation. It also calculates my fringe benefits, which I'll show you here. When I say those 2 months, I click save. And now it calculates my salary and my fringe benefit rate for this particular 2 months. So in this particular case, the story that I'm telling today, I am actually going to have UT cover the cost of my salary for this project. The sponsor, it's not a mandatory cost share project, but we are doing some voluntary cost share in order to make this proposal stronger to the sponsor. So you can see here that I've filled this page in, and now I'm going to go to the cost sharing tab. So I'm going to hit that cost sharing tab. And you can see that right now the sponsor is on the hook for 100% of my salary. But what if I want UT to be on the hook for my salary? Well, all I have to do there is just change this to 0. And then when I hit tab, it moved that 100% right down to this institution line. So this is our UT line. You can think of this as like the third column in the Excel spreadsheet, if you want to think of it that way, where we basically say, the sponsor is not paying for this. UT is paying for this. And so I just immediately changed it. And as soon as I hit tab, it removed it from both period 1 and period 2 and moved everything down to period or to the institution line. Now, I could have put 50 here and it would have moved 50 down here. I could have put 25 and 75. It does the math for you. You don't have to like fill in all of the numbers. The other thing that is important on this page is when I do have cost share, I want to indicate the type and the category. So this is salary. And because this proposal does not require cost share, I'm going to go ahead and put that in as voluntary committed. And again, it fills across for me. And I'm also going to call this in kind because this is part of my salary. So I make that in kind and it follows across. So most of the time you only have to fill out the screen, the value once, and it will copy to the appropriate values. And then of course, if you need to change something, you can make changes in period 2 or in the places where it flowed to that you didn't want it to. But most often the values are all the same. So it's very convenient that way. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And actually, I'm going to say I could have saved and closed because that's I'm done with my line. So a couple of things happened when I did that. It kind of looks like I don't have any money, but I do, because if you look up here in the summary area, you can see where we have our direct costs and our F&A and our indirect costs. All of those are indirects, are F&A, sorry. Our directs and our indirect costs, they're all up here. What happened was because I put in cost share, now I have this little yellow triangle, and this little yellow triangle is a big indicator that, oh, this thing has cost share on it. And when you hover over that yellow triangle, it shows you what's the full project total versus what's being charged to the sponsor versus what's being charged to the institution versus what's being kept track of but not charged to anybody. That's the unallowable category. So, and you'll also notice that this source view is listed as sponsor. I can change this to project view. And now I'll see the whole picture. I can also change it to institution view. And now I'll see just the institution portions of the cost share. But if I want to make changes and I want to like add more items, I need to leave it as sponsor view in order to make additions to the budget. So this is where it's in edit mode right here, is in the sponsor area. So for the time being, that's my personal line, but now I need to add my co-investigators. So I'm going to do that next. I am going to go ahead and hit here. So this is where we would add a new person. I just clicked here, and I'm going to start typing the name of the person that I want to add. So in my example here, my story, my person's name happens to be co-investigator Joe. So I'm just going to type co-invest, and it's going to start filling that in. So if I started with like Smith, I would end up with a lot more options, right? So you just start typing the name, and as it filters down, when it gets to the right person, you can click select or select it by clicking on it. Now I have to make a decision about Joe co-investigator. Is he key or non-key? If you are, if you've submitted to the NIH before, there's a distinction. The key and non-key is kind of maybe a familiar distinction. Co-investigators are typically a key person. So I'm going to select key. And then I'm going to give him a role. And in this case, I'm going to give him the co-investigator role. He could be a co-PI or he could be a multi-PI. It could be any of these things, honestly, but I'm going to make him a co-investigator. And then I'm going to click add person. So I do want to point out that if you start typing the name and you cannot find the person, that may mean that they don't have a profile in InfoEd yet. And all you have to do is send an email to infoed@utoledo.edu. Stacey or Rick will throw that in the chat for you guys. And just give us a first name and a last name. And then if you can, a rocket number, a UTAD, and a department. All of those things will help us get those profiles set up faster. If you can provide a UTAD and a rocket number, especially, but at least a first and a last name, and we'll try and track it down and figure it out. And we'll ask questions of you if we can't figure out who you met. So once again, if you can't find the person, send an email to info@utoledo.edu, and we will get that profile set up. So I imported Joe, and you can see he gets a detail screen just like I had for my demo self. And the first thing that you'll notice is that he also has a base salary that came in from Banner. He also gets that 3% escalation. But you'll notice that he has an academic and a summer. And that's because Joe Co-Investigator happens to be a 9-month employee. So he can ask for up to 3 months of summer salary and or some part of his academic year. In this particular story that I'm telling, I will say that he's going to have 2 months of summer salary on this project. So I'm just going to hit 2 there. And again, I hit tab and it fills in 2 down here. And then I'm going to hit save just to show the salary and the fringe benefits. We do have a question in the chat. Do we need to add additional personnel from different institutions? That depends. If you are going to do consultants, yes, possibly. If you are going to do subcontracts, yes, possibly. It's just going to kind of depend on the situation. And so you would be asking for people in those contexts. And you could email us at info@utoledo.edu and we can address that in the moment. But yes, we don't have very many people that are not UT people in InfoEd right now. All right, so thank you, Stacy. So this is all I'm going to do to Joe. The grant is going to fund the. I'm going to ask for the co-investigator salary to be coming from the sponsor. So I'm not going to need to do any cost sharing on this, and I'm just going to go ahead and save and close. So now I've added another person to my project. The other thing I want to do is add a grad student, but I don't happen to know who that grad student is going to be yet. So what we've done for that is we've created some TBD profiles. So if I just type TBD, so to be determined, I get a list of basically 10 placeholders that I can put for my grad student. So I'm going to go ahead and select that first one. Typically, grad students are non-key persons, so I'm going to select non-key. And then I'm going to call them a graduate student, and I'm going to go ahead and add. So when I do that, obviously we don't know who they are, so they don't have a salary or anything that we can pull in. So we basically have to provide all that information ourselves. So in my the story that I'm telling, the scenario that I'm telling, we have 1 grad student. And if you have more than 1 grad student, you would do 1 TBD profile per grad student that you're going to add. In this case, I just have the 1, so I'm just going to add 1 profile. In this case, also, I know that they are going to get a stipend that is for fall and spring, and I happen to know that that stipend is $28,000. And what I want, so when I tab it again, it fills it all out. And what I want is for this particular grant to cover that whole amount. So I am actually going to change this to just effort. It's just another way of looking at it. It's the same as person months. And I'm just going to say I want them to cover 100% of that $28,000. So 1 person, 100% effort, $28,000. They do get fringe benefits on these. So I'm going to go ahead and click this little triangle here and select the student rate for fringe benefits. And then as soon as I do that, then it adds my little fringe benefits here. You can escalate it. It doesn't escalate it automatically because, again, they didn't have an appointment. So we could escalate this, or we could just say it's probably going to be $28,000 again next year. I'm not going to bother to escalate it. So I'm going to go ahead and just click save and close here. All right. So all of those, that's all my people. And I do want to take a point here because in this little tabs here, there's going to be a little justifications tab where you can actually make notes to yourself and to your grants coordinator about who this person might be and how much they're working and any details about the grad student that you're going to be adding here. The big justification, the justification that's going to go to the sponsor is going to belong over here. So when you describe the people's roles and how they're going to be engaged in the project and all of that to justify their labor costs, et cetera, that's going to belong in your typical local uploadable budget justification file, and you'll be doing that on this justification tab. But if you see when you open one of these up, if you see a little justification tab here, that's basically some internal notes for yourself and for your grants coordinator. So I'm going to go ahead and click close. So that's all the people on this. So I'm going to pause for a second and just let everybody and let any questions come up. Do we have any questions about adding people to your project? All right, fantastic. So after you add your people, or maybe while you're adding your people, you're also going to be adding non-personnel line items. So I'm going to just start with some basic categories. So this budget category list actually comes from the NIH. So it might look vaguely familiar to those of you who are familiar with the NIH budget forms. One of the things that I'm going to add right now is supplies. So I just clicked down and I'm scrolling through this list and I see research and department supplies. So I'm going to click that. And when I click that, I get this list down here. So this list might look familiar to you. If you are familiar with the Concur system, where we do like travel budgets and expenses and stuff, your expense on your P card, those expenses when you have to categorize them, these are the kinds of things that you categorize them into. So in this case, I'm going to pick research supplies. I'm going to go ahead and click add item. And that basically allows me to put some research supplies on. So it gave me my categories. I'm going to go ahead and say I need $50,000 worth of research supplies. That seems like an awful lot to me, but that's what my notes say. I can escalate this. So if I want to change that to 3%, I can just change it and tab over, and it again does the math for me. And then in the case of the research supplies, I'm not going to do any cost sharing on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click save and close. All right, so after I do my research supplies, I'm actually going to do some equipment too. And so I am going to do equipment. Oh, nope, that's not the right one. Sorry. So not that equipment, purchased equipment. There we go. I want the purchased equipment. I want research equipment that's more than $5,000. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. In my story, this is a very fancy new microscope that I need, but I really only need it the once. So it's going to be a very expensive microscope, but it automatically thinks I want to buy another one in the second year, but I don't actually want to do that. So I'm going to just go ahead and delete that out of there. And then I'm going to click save and close. You can't put details in here. And again, there will be a little justifications tab so you can write what this is. You can also change the description. Whoops, that's the supplies line. You can also change the description here to be a microscope if you want. So that's another little way you can remind yourself, what was this for? You can save and close. All right, so now I have my microscope and I have my research supplies. I might also have some travel on this. So instead of like clicking on this and trying to scroll down and find the list, I can also just start typing. So if I just type travel, not sure where my travel went. Oh, travel dash. Okay, so there's my travel, domestic. And then again, this is employee. I'm an employee, so I'm going to go ahead and leave the default there. And I'm going to go to a conference for $1,500. So I can do this, and I can call this conference. Yeah, there we go. Conference in Duluth. All right, I'm going to save, and I'm going to go to that both years. I'm going to save and close. And then in addition to the conference, I need the conference fee as well. So I'm going to go ahead and select travel again. Oops, there we go, travel. And there's a seminar registration right here. So I'm going to add that line item. Maybe the seminar registration is $800. Okay, so now I have two items under that category, and that's perfectly fine. That's what I wanted to illustrate here, is that you can have multiple line, you could have a budget category and have multiple items underneath that budget category. So if I wanted to adjust either one of those, I just click the detail here, and then I can get to the detail that's the conference or the seminar registration. So either one of these, I can get to the detail level within a couple of clicks. So it just categorizes them and rolls everything up so it doesn't, this page doesn't get too crazy with all the line items.
So can I stop you for a moment?
Of course.
Yeah, Tim Fisher, Environmental Sciences here. So I'm working on an NSF proposal, and I do a lot of field work and various trips up to Minnesota by coincidence. And, you know, myself, a couple of grad students, undergraduate research assistant, there's a lot of travel.
Okay.
And if I put in a light item for everything, I might blow up the computer system. So
okay.
can I not put in basically a total for travel, and then the internal documents, the justification shows the breakout?
I think that's a great question. I would defer that to a grids coordinator. Honestly, I'm the system person. So can you do one line item? I suspect you probably can. Because yeah, you don't want to have to put in, I get it, but we do have distinctions for like travel for students versus travel for a domestic employee, versus foreign travel, which is different than domestic travel. These are all categories that are important for categorizing expenses. So I'm going to have to defer that question for the time being.
Yeah, once the travel happens, then I can do that breakdown, but I need a number and a budget for what the total travel is for a couple of years.
Well, I suspect you could probably just put it all under travel domestic. Yeah, I suspect you could put it all under just travel employee domestic. But again, I would want to defer to a grants coordinator on how detailed that needs to be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
If I could just add one little thing, there's really kind of two questions there. One is, what does the sponsor need? And, you know, InfoEd isn't going to force you to provide any more detail than you used to when you submitted, you know, through NSF research.gov. The thing we're going to try to balance is providing enough detail for grants accounting to help them set the thing up. And those are sometimes going to pull against each other. And that's a really good example where they need more detail than the sponsor does. So I'm just going to leave it there and say, yeah, you don't need to put more for the sponsor. We're going to try to balance out a way to provide more information to grants accounting to help speed them up when they set up the thing. And yeah, sometimes they're going to be at odds, like this case.
And we did get a response from our grants coordinating team that it can be lumped together for the sake of the proposal budget.
All right. That's lovely. Great question. Thank you very much. All right. So the other non-personnel expense that you might not think of as non-personnel is tuition remission. So in this particular case, the story that I have this grad student that I put on here, I'm also going to do tuition remission. And in my story, I'm actually in the first 3 years of my tenure track appointment. So that tuition remission is going to be covered by the College of Graduate Studies. So I'm going to go ahead and let me clear this out so that I can then go back to here. And I am going to say the tuition remission is actually a category down here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And I get two options, scholarships and fees or scholarship and books. So this is going to be the scholarships and fees. I'm going to add an item. Now, tuition is kind of annoying, right? It's tricky because it's different for different kinds of students in state, out of state. We do have a web page. So I'm going to flip back to my main tab here for a second and show you guys that this is a resource that we will put in the chat as well, which basically tells you how much tuition is and the general fees for tuition for those for 2023. I assume they'll update that coming up for 2024 at some point. So basically using these numbers, I can calculate how much I need to put in these lines based on how many semesters that grad student was going to be around. So in my case, I said I was going to be a fall and spring person. So I'm going to take this tuition number, multiply it by 2, and come up with 15,354 for that tuition number. Now, again, it might change. And so if you had year 2, if you already knew what year 2 was going to be more, we could put that in. But if not, you can just leave it alone. So this is tuition, and the tuition is going to be covered by the College of Graduate Studies. So I'm going to move it to the cost sharing tab because this is now going to be UT cost share. And you'll see that it reminded me that I needed to save this before I moved. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and save, and then I can hit cost sharing. And I can say that UT is going to cover 100%. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing I did before. I'm going to hit 0 there. And then I'm going to go ahead and make this voluntary committed and grad tuition. So I'm going to save and close. and that's my tuition remission. And again, if I have additional fees, I could put those on the engineering fee or the medical fees or anything like that. All of those are going to go in your non-personnel expenses, even though they're loosely personnel expenses. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Does anybody have any questions for now about non-personnel line items? Okay. All right, great. So I'm going to jump up here to the F&A tab. So F&A is also called indirects. So it's facilities and administration, also called indirects. You can kind of see up here in the summary screen where the F&A is. You can also see an overview of it line item by clicking the F&A screen. So now I can see that I'm not collecting any indirects on my own salary because I'm not charging the sponsor to that, or charging that to the sponsor. But I am going to collect indirects on my grad student. I am going to collect them on Joe Co-Investigator. So you can see how much indirects are coming in for each line item. You can also, this is a good example because remember that equipment that I purchased, we don't get to collect indirects on equipment. And so you can see that even though I have $45,000 here, the base of that is 0. And therefore I'm collecting 0 F&A. And so the system does all of that for you. You don't have to remember that, oh, I can't collect F&A on equipment. The system remembers that for you. But I do collect it on the supplies and the travel and all of those other good things, not on the tuition, obviously, because they're not paying for that. We are. So this F&A page has basically just a breakdown, a summary, and a breakdown of all the places where the F&A is happening and how can you see it. The other thing I want to point out on the screen is sometimes, for some sponsors, we're not allowed to collect our full F&A rate. So if I change this source view to project, again, I can see the whole thing. And I can see that I started out here with this intention to have a base or a target scheme of main campus organized research. So I put that in at the beginning of my proposal when I created this, and I said, this is the rate that I would expect to get. Now, if the sponsor doesn't allow me to get that rate, this is also where I would change it. So I'm changing this back to sponsor. I just want to show you that for a second. I'm going to change this back to sponsor. I'm going to say, oh, sadly, this sponsor only allows me to get 10%. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to 10%. And when I do that and I hit apply, you'll see all of those numbers down here change to 10%. So now I've got all of those numbers that are different. And now you can see also when I move this to project again, it allows me to see, oh, I should have gotten this, which would have given me $148,000 in indirects. But because of the sponsor, I'm only getting 10%. I'm only getting 32. And the difference between those is $115,000. They call it drift. We call it under recovery. So this is a way of keeping track of what are we missing out on because we weren't able to collect our full indirects. Just wanted to note that it's not in this case, this is National Science Foundation. So in this case, it actually would be fine. They don't reduce our indirects. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it back to main campus organized research and apply. And that will fix everything back up again for me. So just as a note too, it also keeps track of when our F&A rate changes between years. So we do leave it as this prevailing method, but basically whatever the indirect rate is on the anniversary date of your proposal. So in this case, I happen to put it right on a fiscal year because that's nice and convenient for me. But it does allow you to say, okay, this year we're going to get 52.5, next year we're going to get 53, and therefore the prevailing rate or the blended rate here, the thing that the overall effective rate of this proposal is actually 52.75. So it does all the math for you and it allows for those changing rates. So as soon as we have a new rate agreement, we throw those in InfoEd and it automatically gets us basically the maximum amount of F&A that we could possibly get.
Jamie, can I butt in real quick? We've got a couple
Sure.
questions accumulating in the chat.
Yes.
One has to do with where to put student health insurance costs. That was sort of, we'll bounce back to that if we can.
Mhm.
And then just now, the ability to create a custom F&A rate, which it looks like Rick responded to. But if the F&A rate is not indicated in the drop down, is there a way to accommodate that?
Yep. So if the F&A rate is not accommodated in the drop down, you actually just hit manual entry right here. And then you can say this one allows for 23%, and then you hit apply, and then it'll do that. So yes, it does allow for, we have the most common ones, but we don't have all of them. You don't have every single percentage point it could be. So that's how you would change that. Just change it to manual entry. You can also even make a note if you, this little pencil allows you to like make a note, but you can change it to whatever rate you absolutely need. So I'm gonna go back and fix it. And then I'm going to show you guys up here. So I did say that we add fees in the same place we add tuition remission. So you can add that under the tuition remission. You can actually, there's another category here. So for student medical fees, I believe you can put it in the scholarships and fees as well. Or I believe the other thing that you could put it in is called subsistence. Let me remind myself. I'm reminding myself. Nope, I lied. Not in subsistence. I think you put it in tuition remission as well. So that's the budget category. It's just a different line item because they are fees do not get cost shared, or the College of Graduate Studies isn't picking up the fees as far as I remember. And I could be wrong about that. So one of my grants coordinators can correct me if I got that wrong. So, but they would be another line item in your non-personnel items, and just put them in tuition remission. Okay. Is that all the questions? All right.
Yep.
All
So
right,
far, that's, if we get any more, we can either interrupt or hold until the end.
I just wanted
There
to
was
add
one more
thing.
there about custom F&A rates if they're not on the drop down.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought I got that. Let me go
Maybe
ahead.
show us one more time. It's a manual entry process.
Yeah, so go ahead in the rate drop down box here. Just hit manual entry, and then you can change the rate to whatever you want, and then hit apply. And that's all you have to do to change the rate to something that doesn't exist in the drop down.
Perfect, thank you.
I just wanted to add, I'm not sure everybody's aware that the rate agreement that we have since July 1, and this is a pretty big break from what we've seen in the past, does have these increases per year, small increases over the next few years. And that's why you get those oddball numbers of an effective rate, because as Jamie mentioned, it's combining the ones that it knows how to apply next year's rate at the, partway through the year. But I'm not sure everybody was aware that we have one that has escalations in the F&A rate for the next few years. So maybe that's news to somebody.
Okay, so that's our F&A tab, which is where you can change the rate to anything you need it to be, but hopefully one of our standard ones, if that's right. So the cost sharing tab basically, again, kind of breaks out each line item by who's paying for it. So in this case, you can kind of see clearly PI demo. I said that our institution was going to pay that salary line. Our grad student, however, and our co-investigator, the institute or the sponsor, is going to pay for both of those lines. And again, each one of these line items, you can see it broken out. So if I had split the research supplies, for example, 50-50, you would have seen 25-25 here. It's just another way of looking at cost share. And this is going to be a really good screen, I think, for deans and chairs when they are doing their endorsement, to be able to say, oh, I can see what I'm on the hook for. Like, what am I committing my department resources to? So this is going to be a very important page, I think, for the endorsement process, to be able to look at and see where the cost share is coming from and who's paying for it. So I just want to give you like a brief overview of that page. The other page that I mentioned earlier was the justifications page. So when you're in the justifications page, this is basically where you're going to upload that. Usually it's a Word document that describes all of the little ins and outs of all the things that you're budgeting for. Just puts the budget justification. So it's the same file that you guys are used to just producing and then sending off to the grants coordinators. It's just going to belong here. And I do want to note that in order to complete your budget, you do have to have a budget justification. So this may be appearing a little earlier than you might be used to thinking of putting it together. It does need to be part of the endorsement process. So it is part of this budget in order to be able to complete this budget and move on to endorsement. It does need to have a budget justification here, at least a draft, if not the completed version.
And just in case this was mentioned and I missed it, endorsement will be required to be completed prior to submission. This is not a change in policy, although it is a bit of a change in practice. So before the proposal can be submitted, the entire endorsement process has to be completed and returned back to the grants coordinator for finalization before it can be submitted. And this justification document will be part of what is needed before the proposal can go through endorsement.
Yes. All right, so those are our 4 tabs here. I'm going to touch on this last tab a little bit. This is some basic like demographic information about the budget, or like overall meta information about the budget. In general, you guys won't have to go to this, but I do want to point it out because there are a couple of features on here that might be useful to you in your world. Leave everything on the general tab alone, but the period/dates page, this is where you can shift or change your project start date, and it will shift all of the budget periods for you. If you have to manipulate the start and end dates of any particular budget period or add or delete budget periods, you can do that here on this periods and dates page. The other thing you can do here is change the PI. So you can change the PI to someone who's already on the project, or you can replace the PI, leave the current PI on, that kind of thing. So this is, if you wanted to change the PI, this is one place to do it. There's also a place on the personnel tab. And then the budget sources tab. So this is where if you have more than one source, so for example, at UT, sometimes we have a cost match program where RSP, our office, actually matches some funds to help with the cost share portion that when it's mandatory. And so in order to reflect 2 institutional sources for cost share, you could add a source here. This is probably going to be something you would want to work on with the grants coordinator to get this correct. But yes, you will be able to add multiple sources for cost share here. And then you can also add the account number for those departments or those other sources of cost share here. And then there's a mechanism opt-in and out. This is an NSF, so they don't use this, but in the NIH world, there are rules that you can opt in and out of, at least opt out of them temporarily. You can't opt out of them forever. So you probably won't have to touch this screen, and you probably won't have to touch the general screen, but these periods and dates, in certain circumstances, you might adjust the periods and dates, you might change the PI, and you might add or manipulate budget sources. So I see we have some questions. Can we copy the budget to a new grant of the same or similar mechanism? So yes, when you are, obviously this is part of our proposal / budget videos and sessions, but yes, when you're creating a new proposal, you can use an existing proposal as a template for that. So you can copy from it. It'll copy the budget. It'll copy the attachments. It'll copy a bunch of stuff for you. You can actually choose what it copies. So you will be able to use a previous budget as a template for your new budget. I hope that answers the question. And then please remember the subject. Oh, okay. So this is one of our grants coordinator team. Going back to cost share from earlier, please remember the subject of involuntary cost share, that some sponsors will view that in a negative light. Additionally, if we commit involuntary cost share, grants accounting must track and report it. So we can't commit, and we can't have committed and involuntary. Please make certain that if you commit it, you will fulfill the involuntary cost share proposed. Thank you, Kim. All right. So that is basically it for the budget. I just wanted to show you all of those different pages. I am going to go back to this and show you the complete budget button. So when you are all done, you are going to go ahead and click that little complete button, and it's going to yell at me because I need a justification because this is an NSF. So I can't complete this until I have put that justification in. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and I'm not going to bother trying to complete this. But when you're done, you're going to do this little button, and that is actually going to, let me go back to here. That's going to put a little check mark right here next to the budget on the proposal page. So the idea is you complete the intake endorsement, the budget, and the personnel page, and then on attachments and routing, that's where you send it. into the endorsement phase. So that's when your grants coordinator gets to check it over, make sure everything's in place for it to be endorsed, and then it will go to your PI if you were not the one that submitted it. It will go to the COI, it will go to the chairs and deans, and everybody will be doing their signatures through InfoEd. So let me just check my agenda here, make sure I copied everything or I covered everything.
While Jamie's double checking the notes, there is a separate training on endorsement for those who do need to complete that task for PIs. There's a recording of a training we've done already, and there's a help guide with click-by-click instructions to walk you through the endorsement process. I know we've got some folks on the call today who are in a role where they will need to be doing endorsement as a chair or a dean.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah, I have covered everything that was in my agenda to cover. So do we have other questions?
Yes, we just had one come in about other workshops. You want to talk about that for a second, Jamie?
Yeah, sure. So, well, we have two things going on. We have prior webinar training like this one, where it's basically you watch me go through some stuff. One of those is called proposal/budget, and we didn't call it 101, but it was an overview. So that's how to create a proposal, where it goes in a little bit more detail about the dash or about the portal and that kind of thing. That webinar. We have not rescheduled another one of those yet, but we do have a recording of that. Actually, 2 recordings of that, I think, on our webpage, which Rick very helpfully just sent a link to. And then the second part of that is that we are holding some workshops. So we just had an NSF specific workshop that we held over in the College of Engineering. We have 3 NIH workshops coming up, and we do have a slide about that when we get to our outro portion. So hold that thought, because those are really going to be like, come bring your real proposal and we will help you get started, help you work on it, help you answer any questions, anything that you think is going to be a sticking point or a weirdness or something you don't know how to do. We will have the grants coordinators there with us. We will have us, and we will figure out how to make that work for you together.
Rick, you may want to address this potentially. Is there a line item for salary release time?
If you're
yeah, there.
muted,
Sorry,
there
I had to unmute. Yes, I just wrote in the chat that I have tried to gather some information on release time to understand what people would like to see accommodated in InfoEd, and I do not yet have an understanding. So I'd like to talk to Isaac and anybody else who has strong feelings on this to understand what we really need to put in there. That's the best I can give you right now. We will make sure that whatever you need to submit can be accommodated in the budget. I'm just not entirely sure how to explain it, because I'm getting very conflicting ideas about what is meant by release time on a budget. So
Right.
Happy to learn and happy to accommodate, but I think we'll have to agree on some language on it first. And another question that came up though is about NIH Assist. So Jamie, you want to jump in on that one? The question is, why would we do this when you have to do it in Assist?
Yes, I saw that. I've got the meeting chat up now that I'm not presenting. So yeah, the short answer is you won't have to do this in Assist. So InfoEd is a replacement for Assist. It's a replacement for research.gov. It's a replacement for any system that you would have gone through to do federal sponsors. So you download this opportunity, you put everything in InfoEd, and we get to push the button from InfoEd and it submits it for you. So you will not have to do the work twice. The idea is that you get to do everything in InfoEd and it goes to research.gov. It goes to NIH Assist. Depending on, maybe you have another portal system or some other third party that you probably will have to do kind of a double data entry, but everything ends up in InfoEd, and everything NIH definitely goes through InfoEd. So you do not have to go to the same place or to put the data in twice. I see another question. Yep, I see another question about common attachment automatically uploaded. So sadly, no, the biosketches, my understanding, I was told that the biosketches are kind of tailored to each project. And so it does not bring biosketches in. This may be changing. There's some talk about Science CV, and I'm not entirely certain how that is going to come out in the end, but for the time being, you will have to, on the personnel page, you will be uploading a biosketch individually for each project. Does the application still go through assist? Hold on, I'm skipping questions. Okay, so that handles the biosketch. This is where you're going to put it. So I'm on the proposal screen and I'm on the personnel tab. And so that's where the biosketches are going to get uploaded. So will software use correct base salary for projects starting in future academic years, PIs and COIs? So you saw that it does do the inflation, or what they escalation, we call it, they call it inflation. The base salary is whatever it is today. So it does not look future. It doesn't know in 2 weeks you're going to get a raise. It doesn't know any of that stuff. So there is a way to override the salary if you know that it's coming, or you could prove it, or whatever. However we currently do it, honestly. But for the time, but what comes in from Banner is only what exists at that moment in time. So unfortunately, I can't predict the future. And even when the future is in Banner, you still have to have what it is today. So hopefully
Jamie, another part of that, though, is that it uses whatever it sees in Banner, but it will apply the cost of living increase, the escalation that you specify in the budget for that person.
Yes, I did say, I thought I said that. Yes, it does automatically include
we looked at an example yesterday where they were out 2 years, and it applied the escalation from the current one to the first year of that budget.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yes, you're right. If your start date is even further out than, a few months, it will know how many percentage points of escalation to include. Okay. Will the software? Okay. Does the application still go through assist? So it goes through grants.gov is the answer to that, I think.
Can I clarify my question?
Yes, please.
So normally I get to see the completed application packet on assist, that this is what the reviewers are going to see.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Will I see that application packet put together on this platform?
Yes. So
Okay.
that is actually on the finalize tab. So in your proposal, when you finished filling all this stuff out, you're basically going to build your application packet here. So you will be able to view each piece of it, as well as the assembled application. You'll be able to download it. It's a PDF, so you can grab a copy for yourself if that's what you want. All of that functionality to build everything and then see what's being submitted is going to be right here on that finalize tab. All right. And then can you show how it can be modified? Which, I'm sorry, Michael, can I show what can be modified?
I think the base salary is probably what he was asking about.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll table that for a second. Just to confirm, the system is only for federal proposals, not state. Incorrect. The system is for all proposals, but yes, thank you, Rick. You can only submit system to system for federal stuff. Yeah. Okay. All right. So then how do I modify salary? All right. That's what we were talking about. All right. So I'm going to go back to the budget screen, the budget tool, and okay, so let's pretend I know I'm going to get a raise. So I'm going to go into the detail here, and I'm going to say, okay, my base salary is currently 120,000 or something like that, and it's going to, it would have escalated 3%. So at the start of the year, it would have been 123, but maybe I know that in fact it's going to be even higher than that. I can make the adjustment here. So this is something you would want to do in conjunction with your grants coordinator. Like you'd want to make sure that they understand why you're doing that and what the change is. But yes, I could say I'm taking on, oh, oops, that's less, huh? That's not going to work out. So I can do that. And then when I click save here, then when I go back to the detail, it's going to have changed those numbers for me. So yes, you can change the base salary, but typically you wouldn't hopefully have to.
Also, notice in both your cases, it escalated it automatically for the next year because you put in the 3%. So you put in 150, but you get 154.5. So
yes. Right.
Depending on the numbers, it may be that the escalation covers the anticipated salary and you won't have to do that.
Right, exactly. It's an excellent point, because right now is 11/15 in fiscal year 24, and this one is not starting until fiscal year 25. It automatically takes fiscal year 24 salary and adds 3% to it. So that may be all you need, or you may know that there's an exact number. And if you want to do that, then you can do that. You would have to make a few other adjustments here. So Michelle had, as a reminder, Michelle, this is one of our grants coordinators. As a reminder, you may have to modify the salaries for postdoc to conform with the updated HR approved salary levels. So just as a note, depending on who your postdoc is, if you're bringing in a real person, especially, but pay attention. There are minimums for postdocs that we need to be following.
Yeah, and I just want to take this moment because we've got a number of grants coordinators and their director on the call today, which we so appreciate their engagement and involvement with this implementation. But those grants coordinators will continue to be the partners that they've always been to you in your budget development and assisting you with finalizing your proposals. We're just shifting the work to a more collaborative platform with InfoEd, and you will still reach out to your grants coordinator for the same kinds of questions in budget development and figuring out numbers and whatnot. And we are doing specialized training with that team of folks here in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs so that they are developing the competency they need to be a support for you in using InfoEd for yourself.
We've had a lot of really great questions. Does anybody have any more? You can unmute yourself and talk if you'd like, or put it in the chat. That's fine. We actually got done in a really good amount of time. So we have our outro coming up. So if there are no other questions, then I will turn this back over to Stacy, and she will show us the last slides and get us some resources.
Awesome. I'm just waiting for PowerPoint to decide that it's going to display. What is happening here? Come on.
We actually saw it. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Resume. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if they did an update. Last week, the PowerPoint made me start over at the beginning. So I don't know. Yeah, so just a couple more things to share with all of you, and then whoever needs to dismiss themselves from the call, you're free to go. And anyone who has specific questions or wants to stick around, we will be available a little bit after the main content has finished to address individual questions. So we've had our demonstration in InfoEd, and like Jamie said, great questions. We love it. Keep the questions coming. That helps us support you all better and better with each one of these that we do. Some upcoming training dates, which Jamie alluded to earlier, and which are turning out to be quite popular already. Since we sent the registration form this morning, we have 3 in-person NIH-focused workshops, 2 on health science, 1 on main campus at the end of November, beginning of December. Space is limited because we need people to be logged into devices and following along with us. And so we know there's going to be a limited capacity on how many folks we can have in a room doing that. But please check your email, see our registration form and QR code to reserve a spot. And we'll be in touch with you more about preparing for those as we get closer to the execution dates for those workshops. But this will be where you can begin an actual, real new proposal and get it started with in-person assistance and support from the Office of Sponsored Research and Sponsored Programs. So we hope to see some of you there. Once again, these are our help sites, our resources page, and our email. Please don't hesitate to contact us with any questions. The more questions we hear that are relevant and important to all of you, the better support we can provide and the better resources we can build. And with that, we are officially finished, and we can stick around for a few more minutes for anyone who has individual questions.
Stacy, if I could just point out, I have a hard time with those long URLs, but if anybody goes to the utoledo.edu page, the main page, and in the search bar you type in InfoEd, that InfoEd FAQ page is the first thing that comes up. So
yes,
if you get to the UT page and type in InfoEd, you're there.
And I think someone pasted the link in the chat a little bit ago.
Hi, Rick. This is Peter. Rick, can you hear me?
Rick,
Yeah,
you're
I said
muted. There you are.
unmute. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Rick, is this system now implemented and this is, we're no beta testers here. This is ready to go?
We have deliberately staggered the rollout so that we can give a definitive yes in time answer to that question. We have tested the system to system in NIH's test environment, and it worked fine, just as you would expect, and you get the email notifications just like as if you submit it to grants.gov. So we're going to continue testing between now and February when we expect the first real cycle to go through. But so far so good, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And also, InfoEd is a very established product. They've been around for a good long time. They have an excellent support system. If something is to go awry, we have on call, especially right around those deadlines and things like that. So we're not beta testers by any stretch of the imagination.
Excellent point. Yeah, that's a really good point. And other schools have been doing this literally for years. And I do know whenever we've had questions about the process system to system, they understand very, very well that deadlines are paramount, and that any issue involving grants.gov system to system must be dealt with very quickly. I've seen that come up a couple of times. So not a lot of times, but it has come up.
Okay, we had two questions here. When will it be available for proposal entries for the Feb 5th deadline? It's available now. So as soon as you are ready to get started, go ahead and log into InfoEd. Please note that if you have trouble logging in, it's possible that you don't have a profile yet. It's unlikely for established researchers, because we did bring in everybody who had done research in the last, I think, 5 years was our date that we picked. But so please feel free if you log in and get started. And then are there plans to add already funded proposals, archived proposals to the system for post-award? So yes, when we get to the post-award side of things, we will definitely be bringing in anything that is currently active, meaning, of course, it's, in its funding cycle, it's within funding. How far back are we going to bring in old stuff? That is still kind of under debate. The further back you go, the worse the data looks necessary, and then trying to put older data into a new system is already a challenge. So we are still in discussion about how far back do we need to go in terms of bringing in awarded things, but we will obviously be bringing in anything that is actively awarded at the time that we go live with our with the post-award side of things. Are there any other questions?
Oh, time for me to shut off recording.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can I ask one more? I hate to come up with all these questions. How does this interface with Faculty 180?
Kind of the same way, unfortunately, kind of the same way it already does. Faculty 180 doesn't directly talk to InfoEd. They don't have any, they have only